how long it will be affected.
And John, apparently there's also some question, as far as we can learn, as to specifically what has happened and where.
Well, this is one of the questions that I asked Mr. Stengren of Consolidated Edison. I said, where can we go to find out the answer? Because we have our mobile units out in the field trying to find out exactly what's going on, and he couldn't answer that question precisely either. So this is one of the difficulties. Con Edison itself, naturally, I suppose on a Sunday night, there is a limited staff, and they are trying to track down the exact cause and just what the problem is.
It does sound a bit incredible, doesn't it? That one would know exactly where the power problem is coming from. But I suppose in a system as big and as complicated as the one that we have here in the New York metropolitan area, although that may be hard to believe, it obviously isn't for those who are working in it. So we can say, though, that the police report the popping of a generator, whatever that's supposed to mean, in a Con Ed power plant at 40th Street and East River Drive, which could well be one of the, or maybe the sole problem spot at this point. That's one of the things we're checking out, of course. And the effect of this has been very scattered. As far as we can determine, there's been no significant effect at all on the subway trains. Or the most obvious effect, I guess, to most people in the New York area is the fact that they have no television tonight. That television is off. And there are, of course, scattered brownouts in some areas, particularly in lower Manhattan, also in some sections of the Queens and the Bronx. And that there are, in some cases, some scattered blackouts, such as the Empire State Building. The Department of Sanitation, which is gearing for possible rain and snowstorms, reported its Manhattan teletype system serving headquarters garages and other installations was out of service because of that power failure. Incidentally, a resident of the area, Miss Jean Parks of East 40th Street, says the failure affected her lights and television.
Well, about between 7:15 and 7:30, the lights went dim, suddenly. And then about 2 seconds later, they went dimmer again. The television went all wobbly. So we turned it off. And that was it. You knew?
That was Miss Jean Parks, and we certainly know. Consolidated Edison has already established a recorded announcement to explain the difficulty to the thousands of people affected by the failure. Dialing the number gets the caller a frantic-sounding spokesman who assures him that everything is being worked on.
This is a recorded announcement from Con Edison. If you are calling about a service interruption in New York, around the Midtown area, we are aware of the trouble and are working to restore service as soon as possible. Thank you.
That's a recorded Con Ed spokesman. But as you probably heard John Linker note a few moments ago, Con Ed, in our contact with the giant utility, at this point, at least as of a few minutes ago, we're not absolutely sure what the cause was, or for that matter, even where it was. Mayor John Lindsay has alerted the New York City Emergency Control Board, composed of top city officials in critical departments, such, of course, as the fire and the police. Of course, all local television and radio stations which use the Empire State Building antennae are off the air. Of course, WCBS News Radio's antenna is not on top of the Empire State Building. They're off the air because power at that building was affected. In fact, there's no power at all at the Empire State Building. The network programs carried by leased telephone lines, however, are not affected out of town. This is strictly a local television failure. One added worry for police, of course, is that the power failure has knocked out burglary alarm systems in the affected Manhattan area. Foot patrolmen and radio patrol cars have been alerted to keep extra watch on business establishments. Beat patrolmen have been sent to the Diamond District. That's here in mid-Manhattan between West 45th and 47th Streets, that area stretching between 5th and 6th Avenues. Reports have come in that many owners of bars and restaurants have just told their customers to go home, which is, I guess, pretty good advice. And, of course, if you don't have to come into the city tonight, you don't, by all means. The power failure has caused traffic lights to go out, and police emergency units responded to direct traffic at intersections in the affected areas. We had some reports earlier where pedestrians and motorists, I guess, in some cases, were also directing traffic. No reports of any tie-ups of significance. Of course, this is a weekend. Patrons in bars and restaurants in the affected area are being asked to finish what they've had to eat or drink and then leave. As we noted, in some metropolitan area viewers were picking up New England radio and television transmissions on the otherwise snowy screens. Speaking of radio, of course, only those stations who are using that common antennae on top of the Empire State Building in mid-Manhattan are affected. WCBS, of course, not one of them. The Transit Authority reports the only effect on them of that power reduction was on the 6th Avenue line between West 4th Street and 50th Street at Rockefeller Center. A Transit Authority employee says that F, that's F as in Frank, and D trains, D as in Donald, are being diverted to 8th Avenue subway lines, and that B trains, that's B as in Bobby, are using BMT Broadway line tracks between DeKalb Avenue in Brooklyn to 57th Street and 7th Avenue. Those are only minor inconveniences, certainly, on the subway system to report tonight. The power failures are affecting the New York Daily News, too. The spokesman in the press room says that Daily News presses stopped running at about 7:30 this evening. He says that most of the city editions were off the press by that time and on the street. But the future is not known for the paper's 2-, 3-, and 4-star editions, which go to press normally throughout the evening and early morning. We're checking now for any possible effect the power troubles may be having on the New York Times. Our skies over New York right now are cloudy. Our temperature is 35 degrees. Our winds are brisk northeasterly at 15 miles an hour, with gusts to 29 at the moment. And we do have a wind chill factor. It feels 23 degrees. It'll be cloudy and windy with snow gradually mixing with freezing rain tonight and slowly changing to all rain early tomorrow morning. Some accumulations of snow and ice can be expected, especially in the western and northern suburbs. Roads will become slippery later tonight and stay that way through tomorrow morning's rush hour. Lows of 28 to 34. All of that from Bob Weaver in the WCBS Weather Center. Cloudy and windy tomorrow with rain heavy at times, gradually ending. Highs of 35 to 41. Here's a brief recap now at 14 minutes past the hour of 8 of tonight's power problems being experienced by Con Ed, which incidentally, those power problems surfaced just about an hour ago. A possible explosion in a Con Edison generator on the east side is apparently the cause of tonight's power problems in Manhattan, in Queens, and Brooklyn, and the Bronx. WCBS newsman Gary Moore is now at Con Ed. Gary, what have you learned?
Well, very little, George. I'm sorry to report. Nobody from the company or those connected with the company is saying very much here. In fact, nobody's saying anything at all. One of the guards here said that he was an ear witness to what may have taken place, and that at about 7:30 or so, he said he heard what sounded like a hissing noise. He compared it to the steam escaping from a high-pressure steam pipe, and he came outside the building to see what was going on, and he saw smoke or steam, as he described it, pouring out from the building which houses the generators here on the east side plant of First Avenue. It's Waterside number 2 is the designation of the entranceway. He said that lasted for about 5 minutes, and then it stopped, and there's been nothing since. There is no company spokesman here. There is no physical evidence of any damage which may have resulted from an explosion or whatever it is that took place within the plant, knocking out some of the generating equipment. And the only description we have is that guard description of sort of steam escaping from a pipe to indicate that actually anything at all has taken place here. I did notice 2 mayoral aides drive up with lights flashing and siren wailing. They went inside the lobby of the plant, talked to one of the guards, and came running back out again with nary a word. So as far as what has taken place inside the Con Ed plant here on First Avenue and the 40th Street, we still really don't know, George.
What's going on there right now? Anything?
Very little activity. There are no fire or police emergency cars on the scene. There are a couple of Con Ed trucks with lights flashing, but nothing really to indicate that anything of any significance has taken place here. There are more newsmen gathered outside, standing around trying to wonder why we can't find out anything than there are emergency crews or Con Ed people going in and out of the plant. There's very little activity at all on the street.
I take it there's no indication at all from Con Ed that they'll even be coming out to talk with you. Is that correct?
There has been no indication one way or the other. We're being ignored is what it amounts to.
Well, First Avenue and 40th Street, where you're located right now, Gary, is normally a pretty busy area of town, traffic-wise. What does it look like right now?
No problem. Sunday night, it's not really that busy. The lights in this immediate section, the traffic lights, the signal lights, are operating, and there are lights in the apartment buildings across the street. That would be the west side of First Avenue, right across the street from the Con Ed plant. There are lights on in the Con Ed plant itself, and as I look around me, all the street lights are on, the traffic lights operating, and the windows are lit in those apartment buildings. In this immediate area, there is no problem with power, apparently, right now.
Right, Gary. We'll be keeping in touch with you, of course. There are now reports that there is no power at all between 5th Avenue and Broadway, between approximately 34th Street and 50th Street, which isn't too far from you, Gary, by the way. No power at all in that area. These blackouts and brownouts are, as you can see, the pattern. Have no pattern tonight. They're scattered. John Linker has been checking. John, what have you found?
Well, apparently that Midtown section is the hardest hit, George, because the Police Public Relations Department just told us that they understand there are independent trains stalled in both the 34th and the 42nd Street stations, and consequently service is seriously impaired on the independent line in the Midtown section because of the stalled trains. We asked the police department if they had any better explanation than popping for the generator, and the explanation was apparently it was a mechanical explosion in the equipment within the plant and that there were no injuries. Now, the police department, as a precaution, is now deploying units of the tactical police force into the Midtown area just in case there's an extended blackout and they're needed for protection. They're not moving in any particular area or moving on any particular sites, but the TPF is alerted and their units are moving out into the Midtown area in case they're needed. And that's the latest report from the Police Public Relations.
All right, thank you, John. John Linker. Incidentally, that power problem, and Con Ed has not yet been able to put its finger on it exactly, hit just over an hour ago. Just over an hour ago. Now we have some more information, I understand, from Gary, who's down at Con Ed at the plant near the United Nations. Gary?
George, there is something I wanted to add to what John Linker just said, and that is that one thing we've been able to find out we believe, at least definitely at this point, is that there has been no fire here, and as John Linker pointed out, no injuries in the plant itself. This confirms the police report of no injuries, but I did want to add that there has been